Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about the dimensional harmonics that can restructure your field, especially if you are someone who sees yourself as transmuting energy for the collective, and sometimes it kind of drags you down a little bit. But we're also going to go into the magic of the number 369 and why it might be our harmonic key to understanding our progression through the evolutionary stages. So if you're new here, I'm Leanna, a quantum energy guide and healer and channeler for the Divine Mother frequencies. I do a whole lot of different things, have a lot of interest, and converge a lot of different subject areas and intuitive knowings. Before we get into this video, let's talk a little bit about what I have going on currently. If you've been following my journey, you know that I do grid work connected to the womb-heart axis of Earth, helping the Ouroboros close, and proceeding with my own relational work through the womb-heart axis and embodiment framework through the Alchemy journey in the next coming years. So if you're interested in learning more about that and you haven't seen my videos, you can check those out on my page. You can contribute to my journey through my Ko-Fi. Some other things that I've had going on recently is I've come up with a new framework of astrology, soul arc astrology, which is a unified field between tropical astrology and sidereal astrology, looking at the transformative hero's journey through the arc of transformation of Ophiuchus, not as a 13th sign, but as a bridge of restoration and resurrection. And I'm serializing the framework or a guide on my Substack page. I also have a GPT where I uploaded the rules so you can see if this lens shift or this perspective of astrology resonates with you, but it's not to replace an astrologer, and you do need to check for accuracy, but you have all the rules so you can easily do that. And things that have been coming up for me recently working with clients or hearing from people is that there is this projection need. It's almost like, okay, so in this video, this might make a little bit more sense because we're going to talk about the mirror phase. I'm a projector in human design, and I don't know much about human design, but I know it relates to this phase that we are in, being projectors, like it's our time. And I believe it's because we are at the end stages, or a lot of people who have been working through their embodiment of their divine expression, or in the embodiment phase, or in the mirror collapse phase, meaning they're collapsing all the things they've had reflected for their own growth into lived form, into motion, into movement, and creation. Intuitively, it's been coming up that projector is connected to this phase that I'm seeing. And I believe it's because projectors are naturally gifted at realizing when their reflections, what they have to reflect to others about them, is needed without getting stuck in someone else's mirror, without getting stuck in other people's projections. And I think it takes us a while to get there. But I think once we know what's ours and what's not, we are able to reflect in a way other people's fields that keeps our fields coherent and alignment with ourselves without identifying with their loops and with their feedback when it's not for us. And so there's a little bit of like, we have to work through the projections of us that have clogged up in our field in order to understand and make space for that and reclaim our own field, our own space. And so what I'm seeing is, once we understand who we are, we're naturally stronger in standing in that knowing. And we're naturally stronger at offering the reflection without explicit invitation, but listening to the invitation from the field. And so what I'm noticing is a lot of people who are awakening, or maybe they've been awake for a while, but they're overwhelmed and they don't know what is theirs, what is not. They don't have a way to talk about their intuition or their spiritual experiences in a way that is coherent, in a way that feels safe for them and aligned. But they're also being pushed to go very quickly, or their soul is pushing them to go very quickly, as many systems, many things are coming to light that they need to change. And so I've been having people who need a space to work things out in a natural way, but have someone be able to reflect back what the truth of their field is saying without getting too enmeshed in it, as well as a way to recohere their field so they can confidently grow their own intuition, their own knowing, their own business, their own relationships, whatever it is that they're in. And to really move through that in a way that is stable, in a way that is safe, in a way that understands embodiment and somatic reweaving, but also allows them to naturally develop at a pace they're comfortable with. So I have launched already on my site a longer program, Soul Restoration. It takes you through soul restoration and resurrection through a 5-week journey or a 12-week journey. Or if you don't need that much support, I also have a 5-day journey. But the 5-day and 12-week journey is 5 weeks of energy work, 5 to 12 weeks of energy work, where you go through energy clearing, past life work, working with your higher selves, as well as whatever intuitively wants to be worked on with you weekly and daily mentorship. So if you feel like you're wanting a more held container for restoration and resurrection, you can check that out on my website as well. So now let's get into the harmonics of the dimensional frequencies and the magic of 369. So now today we're going to be talking about dimensional frequencies. And for this video, I'm sticking to that there are 12 pillar dimensions. And I recognize and honor that there's many understandings of what the dimensions are, what happens in them, what they mean. And I have a few other ways that I've brought through information about dimensional frequencies as well, and hold them all as pieces of truth. So this is not a finite truth. It is just an understanding, a way of seeing them, a way of philosophizing and symbolically understanding more about our purpose and our growth as humans. So for this video, there's 12 pillar dimensions in the same way that there are 12 constellations in the zodiac. And I see these 12 pillars grouped in triadic harmonics of 4 triads of 3. But from there, I recognize that they branch off and tessellate, creating many dimensional frequencies within them. So I've talked about triadic harmonics many times before. And triadic harmonics are a grouping of 3 and that form a unified triad. So they're the 3 that are one. And when they are tesseracting, when they are unified, they mirror, they have essence of the 3 in one. So meaning that you'll find aspects or that they could switch harmonics in their triad very easily. So within the body and with most things, I see this as divine mind, which many call masculine principle, and divine body, which many call feminine principle, and the heart as the third component. So this is how I see this as part of my purpose, to share things in this way, as well as other triads. But these triads at their core are of giving, receiving, and creating. And the divine mind could be seen as the logos, divine voice, the word that creates. The heart is the relational heart that creates and expresses in motion, in magnetism, other ways. And the body could be seen as the womb or root that is passive generation and creation. So they all have components of creation. They're all gates of creation. And when working together is when you can, to me, co-create with your reality in a very magical way, embody more of your divine essence when they're unified. Now, this understanding was inspired by my friend Dana Kipple, who wrote and just released a new force. If you're interested in consciousness, expanding your understanding of how to co-create with your reality, how to co-create with plasma, and seeing the divine feminine in a little bit of a different light, I definitely recommend this. Have not completed the book, I'll be honest, yet. But enjoying it so far. And so Dana's book is about plasma, what is understood as the fourth state of matter commonly. Plasma, an example of plasma is lightning in our everyday life. But to her, she explains plasma as relating to the fourth dimensional field, as relating to the divine feminine, as relating to this field where we can co-create. It's a vessel for consciousness. And how she kind of sees the dimensions at these different awareness levels of consciousness and creation, and plasma in different capacities in each dimension. And so, like I said, I haven't read it all, so I might not be doing it full justice, but you should definitely check it out if it's something you're interested in. So the key for this book to me was reading about how she perceives plasma as this divine feminine relational field of emotion and reception, but also where a lot of our shadows and negative emotions are at, and having to work through the wounds and the shadows in order to access our higher self in the fifth dimensional field and to increase our coherence and co-creative abilities. So as she was talking, or as I was reading about it, I was sort of pondering, is she talking about just the divine feminine, just creative energy or life force energy? Or is she talking about the fourth dimension? Or is she talking about the unity of mind, heart, and body? And really, I think it's a bit of all three. But that inquiry just sort of opened up this understanding for me, which is that the dimensions of 12 can also be grouped in triads. And honestly, I'm not sure, since this is my whole thing, why I hadn't looked at it before. Just wasn't time, I guess. So through this understanding, if we group them in triads, and if we go through this 4D as this divine feminine energy, this field that holds the shadow and creative plasma and emotional intelligence, I sat with that in meditation, and I then began to understand and see how the dimensions, or the octaves of dimensions, weave together as a triadic waveform, sort of hugging each other and swinging together at the same time. And now I work with the fourth dimension a lot in order to help recohere collective shadows, collective consciousness agreements that are created by fear. And it's something that my oversoul field and higher self work to do as well. So I did have an understanding of this mother energy, this womb field of the fourth dimension a little bit already, but I hadn't really conceptualized it as a womb field. So we could say from this understanding that the fourth dimension is a womb of restoration to the unified field. And so if the 4D is a womb field, that means there are other womb fields. So looking at that triadic concept, I began to understand that 1D, 1 through 3D, is binary creation. 1D is the mineral and elemental womb creation of matter. 2D is the binary heart of motion and instinct. And 3D is the binary relational awareness, the ego mind, the duality mind. And then the next octave would be where the unified field begins, at least in our current state. The 4D being the womb of restoration of the unified field. The 5D, the relational heart of coherence and oscillation, and the 6D, the relational awareness of the cosmic mind. Now, just to pause a bit on the 4D womb of restoration. I wrote a Substack article that covers this topic, and some of my topics I've found recently are better suited for Substack because it's very mind heavy. It's easier to explain, I think, or see maybe in writing. But 4D, being the womb of restoration, is in a state where it's gotten clogged up, or the intuitive word that came through was a septic state of fear and separation and control and false narratives. And so the 4D womb of restoration should operate in a movement with all other dimensions as they are all interwoven and laced, but sort of in a step between the 3D and the 5D. The 3D mind and the 5D relational heart. But the reason it struggles to move is because of the septic nature, but because it can't move up to 5D until it recoheres. And it can't recohere when we are here in the 3D looking at it with fear and misunderstanding or not looking at it at all. So the 4D you would call back your fragments, your shadow parts, when you are able to stop judging them, when you are able to learn from them with awareness and coherence, and welcome them back into your own unified field. Or if it doesn't belong to you, the 4D would be able to recohere it, restore it, and allow it to go back to its master soul aspect or to source creation. And this is how I understand, how I've seen and been shown through my own perspective, because I work with entity and foreign energy release, is actually what's happening when practitioners are working with entity and energy release for most foreign energies, is that if it doesn't belong to you and you're doing it properly, it is going back to its master soul aspect, which affects all of the soul expressions of that field. It restores it through all of those expressions, or it goes back to source. So right now there's a lack of coherent movement in the 4D space, in the 4D realm, but it's being restored. I know a lot of us are actively restoring it right now. So until that happens, it kind of makes some stagnation more common. It also makes it very easy for those of us who are working with the 4D to absorb some of that density that doesn't belong to us, that will stick to us until we release it back to the 4D, or if we know how to recohere it and send it back to source, or if it's ours, recohere it through our own womb field and body and integrate it. And so in my article, I talk about how this understanding opened up an intuitively guided practice for me, where I, at the same time, brought up my 1 through 3D self to the 4th dimension and brought down my 5th dimensional heart to embody that more and to help me stabilize my field and energetics and to not absorb density that's not mine, which you can read about in the article. Now, the next octave is the octave of cosmic creation. This is 7D to 9D, 7D being the womb field of the cosmic logos. It's the mother of the mother, the mother of the cosmic mind. 8D is the heart of cosmic tessellation. And 9D, relational awareness of the cosmic monad. Then we get to monadic creation. 10D, womb of fate, or coherence of past, present, and future. 11D, cosmic order, and 12D, body of the one. So the monadic creation isn't as clearly the mind. Body of the one would be the mind of all, kind of, but the body that holds all. And cosmic order is also a reference to motion and time and harmony. So like I said, all dimensions, all octaves of the dimensions interlace and work as one, as an evolutionary pattern of ascent and descent. And currently 1 through 3 is separated from the unified field. So it's sort of like cut off from the rest of the body in order to preserve it. And when we can embody somatically and reweave the architecture of our field to embody the 5th dimensional heart, is when we can more easily work with transmuting or transducing and recohering the 4th dimensional field, because it becomes less emotional. We're not as separated from our constructs of perception and duality and judgments, and it becomes more architectural and more of our role without attachment. And when I say embody, I don't mean just because you channel from the 7th dimension, 8th dimension, means that you're embodying your 5th dimensional heart. Or just because you can journey all the way up to the 12th dimension does not mean that you're embodying your 12th dimensional heart. Because I wasn't fully. I know that there are times when I was. And currently I'm working on practicing that every day so I can more easily embody it without thinking. Like a praying without ceasing sort of thing. If you've read Franny and Zoe, you might understand what I'm saying. But it's an internalization process, but it's an embodiment process, not just internalizing. Yeah. So just because you work with the higher dimensions, you understand them, you see them, you know what they mean, you know what unity consciousness means, you understand light and dark, and you know not to judge them. In your mind, and in your mind you don't. In your mind, you love them all. But your heart and your architecture of your field in the 3rd dimension may not have caught up to that relational awareness yet. Because you have to embody it here, now, in your 3D body. So if you're interested in reading more about this portion of the video, definitely check out the Substack. I'm going to transition now to talking a bit about the harmonic numbers of this. And for this one, I actually have a script, so I'm trying to move. Okay. So after I wrote the article about the Triadic Harmonics of Dimensions and related them to the triads of the body or womb, root, the heart of relation and motion, and relational awareness or mind, my higher self let me know I would be making a video. And that's fair, right? That I make a video. So that's what I'm doing now. But as I was tuning into that, I kept seeing the image of an old friend, we'll call them, presenting. And it was a reminder to remember what I learned from him. So I will have to give a shout out to Jordan Collin from Alchemical Science for this, who taught me the significance of doubling and tripling and its relation to harmonic waves, harmonic understanding. Jordan Collin also provides education about the thunderstorm or plasmoid generator, which I'm going to tie in a little bit. So doubling and tripling is applied in areas like vortex math, music theory, scalar frequencies, understanding the cosmic bodies and the relationship between them, and I'm sure other areas. And I'm not an expert in this by any means, so I might not get everything exactly correct, and I'm not going into a lot of the technicals about it. So if you're interested in some of this information, I suggest you research it yourself. I'm just highlighting a pattern here, and maybe it's key for someone else. I do feel like I hold one harmonic key that needs to be released, and then maybe someone else is going to do something else with it. So I knew doubling and tripling of the triadic numbers was something that my intuition wanted to look at, but I didn't fully understand why. So in harmonic waves, frequency, and music theory, doubling is a 2-to-1 ratio. So theoretically, I'm interpreting this as mirror creation or mirror phase creation and collapse. It's the one separating to 2 for reflection and the 2 reunifying as the 1 to collapse the mirrors into lived embodiment. So in harmonic waves, a 2-1 ratio is seen as the most stable, that it's like a perfect pair or mirror. A tripling is a 3-2 ratio and creates the perfect fifth of the balance field of the 2. It's in a form of creative motion. A 3-2 is seen as the second most stable in harmonic theory. So I knew I needed to look at doubling and tripling of the triads. They're in triads, so this may not be as mind-blowing for some of you as it was for me if you understand numbers, but it's still a harmonic key. So when you double the first octave of the dimensions 1, 2, 3, you get 2, 4, 6. When you triple, you get 3, 6, 9. It seems reasonably simple, right? But 3, 6, 9 is a harmonic key of the stable and coherent unified field. 3, 6, 9 is important in sacred geometry, vortex math, known to Nikola Tesla as holding the keys to the universe, if only we understood them. And when you double and triple the other octaves, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, etc., and then look at their number reduction, or their numerology of the tripling, you get 3, 6, 9 every time. And yes, we are looking at triads, so it's very Pythagorean, and 3, 6, 9 is a common pattern that some would understand would show up in this way. When you look at the sum and reduction of the crosswise numbers, which I'm going to try to put some stuff on the screen, the triad from these, the doubling and tripling, such as 1, 2, 3 equals 6, 2 plus 4 plus 6 equals 12, a number reduction of 3. 3 plus 6 plus 9 equals 18, a number reduction of 9, you get the 6, 3, 9 sequence. When you add up the rows from top to bottom or bottom to top and look at the number reduction, you get 6, 3, 9 or 9, 3, 6, depending on the direction you're going. And these numbers appear even more if you continue to look at it. In the triadic harmonic model I presented, the third, sixth, and ninth dimension are all what I see as dimensions of relational awareness or mind. Now, the funny thing is that 369 was serendipitously thrown in my face by the YouTube algorithm when a video of, Matthias DeStefano popped up in a short talking about the numbers, mentioning something about them being portal dimensions the same day I was looking into this. And I don't really know the full context of the video, but I remember being a little skeptical about it because that is my natural nature. I have to look into something myself. But I think there is a correlation to them being relational awareness or mind dimensions that make it appear as if they are portal dimensions. But through my model, all the dimensions move and swing together for cycles of growth and evolution. But let's talk more about why doubling and tripling is so relevant and why 369 is a harmonic key. This is how I interpreted it. And like I said, you may have your own luminous understanding that you are able to build further on. And I feel that maybe some of you do. The doubling and tripling harmonics are phases of restoration and return within each dimensional octave. Sort of octaves within the octaves. The doubling, the mirror phase of reflection and growth as a tool for recoherence. Once you bring awareness to the mirror, recohere it if it is fragmented, and then collapse it into lived form, and learn to recognize which mirrors are not yours, because not all mirrors are for you. Then you can enter the 369 phase of the perfect fifth, the key to the harmonized, unified field. So another word I'm going to use for how I relate to the number 369 is an intuitive word that came up when I was looking at the ratios and harmonics of the thunderstorm generator. Now, I know they describe the thunderstorm generator as true alchemy, and at some point they described it as transmuting. I'm not sure what they describe, how they define it now, since they've moved further along with it, because I haven't looked into it in a very long time. And I'm not making a claim related to their machine at all. I believe this word came up when I was looking at their ratios as a key for now. And that word is transmigration. So to me, 369 is a harmonic key of transmigration. You can look at the literal definition of transmigration, which is moving from one state to another. This could be from one place to another, one plane of existence to another, one state of being to another. And it's also usually used a lot when talking about reincarnation, souls transcending or moving from one state of being to another, one life to another. But you could also see transmigration as an alignment or realignment in nature. Now, when we talk about dimensions in the spiritual space, there's a lot of talk about moving from 3D to 5D. And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about transmigration as an equivalent to the shift from 3D to 5D. And the shift in the way that most people talk about it is not something that I perceive in the same way. How I'm seeing this is moving from one state of the instinctual binary existence in the 1 to 3D octave to the mirroring phase of awareness. Once you see the pattern and embody it consistently, then you move to kinetic embodiment phase, creative motion, and relational awareness with the field around you, with your divine expression in your 3D body. This is embodiment of the perfect fifth harmonic. From the perfect fifth harmonic, then perhaps you can transmigrate in the next life to a new octave of dimensional awareness, which is the relational awareness of the cosmic logos in the 6th dimension. Or we can raise the awareness over time here on Earth. But all dimensions are intervals in a standing wave. The triads of 3 in a group of 4, descending and ascending through 12 dimensions, is a perfect harmonic in itself. A 3-2 ratio, a 4-3 tension, ascending and descending through the 12. And each are a chord on one instrument, a tone in one song. So the harmonic octave is a symbolic map of awakening, of consciousness, and embodiment of your divine expression and form, highlighting the relational field of evolution and growth through the harmonics of time or heart, body, and mind. In this framework, we're not escaping from one dimension to another or instantly shifting, but working towards returning each octave to a stable and coherent wave form before transmigrating. And it also reestablishes the triadic nature of the one and wave of creation, at least in my perspective. And I would love to hear what you think. It's a new way of looking at how we relate to our body, heart, and mind as one. So I'll place the Substack article below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe, or comment below telling me your thoughts. If you're in need of guidance or mentorship during this time, please check out my services. I would love to work with you.